So when the Jets go up against the Packers this weekend, who do you think is going to come out on top and why?
So I'm going to actually go with the upset here. I'm going to go with New York. I think that Green Bay is kind of falling apart at the seams. I think that the Jets are actually outplaying a lot of other people's expectations. Zach Wilson has shown that he can be mobile, has shown that he can pass in the pocket. The Jets have found ways to run the ball with Brees Hall, Michael Carter, and Corey Davis, and obviously Garrett Wilson are playing exponential right now. I think that both of them are playing a lot better than what people had anticipated as well. And the Jets are over exceeding expectations. People really don't understand is they also have a top 10 defense in the NFL in terms of overall defense. They're averaging 100 and what is it? Excuse me, 205 passing yards per game. They've only allowed 313 total yards as a team, which isn't bad when you consider rushing yards and all these other combinations of where you can rack up yards. They're only allowing 23 points per game, which is not horrible for a Jets team. And I think that Robert Saleh has really coached this team to play well in all facets of the ball. Special teams is playing well. Obviously, you have the defense is playing good. Zach Wilson is going to get into a rhythm and continue to get better. The running game is playing very well. And I just think that they're overall just playing at such a high level at this moment. I know the record doesn't reflect it, but when you had Joe Flacco in there and, he didn't exactly do incredible, I also believe that when Zach Wilson got there, the offense immediately took a jump to that next level because of Zach Wilson's ability to be mobile and, of course, the accuracy that he has as well. When you go into the Packers side, the inconsistencies at the wide receiver position. One week it's one receiver, one week it's another. Like last week was Randall Cobb. The week before that was, of course, now I'm going to forget his name. I don't know if it's Watson or Hobbs, whichever one it was at the moment.
Dobbs,
It was Dobbs, excuse me.
Romeo
Um,
Dobbs.
Romeo Dobbs, just it's always somebody that has to take over in a moment, but none of them have been consistent throughout the year. Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, we know, are very capable of being downhill runners that can easily put up 150, 175 yards between the two of them. It's just a matter of what rhythm are they going to get in. Are the New York Jets going to get off to a hot start to where Green Bay doesn't run the ball? Is Aaron Rodgers going to overcompensate with his arm and throw the ball 40 times? We don't know. Green Bay truly is the definition of up and down. I mean, they barely beat Tampa, and Tampa was struggling. And then obviously they barely beat a third string quarterback in overtime. And then last week they lose to Daniel Jones and the Giants, which, no disrespect, I don't believe anybody, including myself and Kyle, picked the Giants to win. And the Giants played great, and they did what they needed to do, and they upset Aaron Rodgers in London. So unless Green Bay finds a way to snap out of it, unless Green Bay finds a way to get back to their culture of winning and, playing efficient turnover-free football, I think the Jets come away with one here. I think it's going to be a big steal, especially because it's going to be in Lambeau right now. And my gut is telling me to go with the Jets. And every single time I went against my gut to try to be analytical or look at the numbers too much, I really believe that ended up screwing me. So I'll take the Jets here. I won't say it'll be a blowout by any means. I think the Jets will win by 3 to 7 points. I wouldn't be surprised if this was somewhere around the score of 24-28 or 28-24, should I say, Jets. But yeah, I'm going to take New York and Zach Wilson. We'll see what happens.
For me, I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going with the Packers in this one. When I look at the Packers, yeah, they definitely had some up and down performances the last couple of weeks. Obviously, 2 weeks ago against the Patriots, they really struggled. I mean, granted, they did get the win, but it took overtime to go get that, which was kind of surprising. And I'm a Patriot fan, and I was actually surprised we were that competitive in that game. And then when you look to last week, I mean, look, the Packers got off to a great start against the Giants. It's just the Giants completely shut them down in the second half, and they weren't able to move the ball effectively at all. So you got to give the Giants some credit there in that regard. But I think the Packers, when they go up against the Jets this week, I think that they have the advantages, and I'll lay them out here. When I look at the Packers, yeah, they've been struggling the last 2 weeks, but I think the one thing that I could stand out from the Packers specifically is even though that they've had some issues on the offensive side of the ball with just the chemistry between Aaron Rodgers and his young receivers, they have been able to move the ball effectively. It just hasn't been for 60 minutes yet. And I do believe that I think that loss against the Giants last week probably set that tone in motion where they got to look at each other in that locker room and essentially say, guys, we got to be out there for 60 minutes and we got to go balls to the wall. We can't let drives go unfinished. We got to convert some of these third downs to extend drives and get points on the board, whether it comes in the form of a field goal or a touchdown. The big point of emphasis for me when it comes to the Packers is they have to maintain drives and they have to play a full 60 minutes on that offensive side of the ball. And not only that, you could say the same thing for the defensive side of the ball, just because last week they had a pretty good first half and then they just completely got destroyed by the Giants in the second half. They scored 17 unanswered points, and the Packers defense was just completely bewildered by the fact that that game got away from them that quickly in the second half. But I just think, for me, I have more faith in Aaron Rodgers than I do in Zach Wilson. And that's no slight on Zach Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And even though that things have been unstable for the Packers so far, I just believe that Aaron Rodgers is not going to make the mistakes that Zach Wilson could potentially make. I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Wilson has a turnover or two in that game against Green Bay. And not only that, I believe this is his first time going to Lambeau Field. So this will be a new environment for him. And he may get uncomfortable just based off the fact that the Packers could bring a pretty good pass rush. And if he's not able to adjust to it properly, there's going to be some opportunities for the Packers to take advantage of. And I think really the best way that I could describe this with the Jets, these last two wins that the Jets have had, they've been against the Steelers, and the Steelers are probably one of the worst teams in the NFL. And they did beat the Dolphins, but the Dolphins are facing some injuries, and they're not necessarily at 100% yet. Granted, the Jets did score 40 points, but I'm not going to take that win that seriously. I'm going to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, just because if the Dolphins were at full strength, I'd have a completely different mindset about that win. But I just don't have a lot of faith that they're going to be able to continue that success going against Green Bay this week. It's just whenever the Jets have gone up against really good talent, as far as the teams that they're going up against, they've struggled. When they went up against the Bengals, they lost 27-12. When they went up against the Ravens, they lost 24-9. And even though they beat the Browns were up 30-17, and the Browns just found a way to choke that game in the last 2 minutes of the game. So whenever the Jets have gone up against a decent team, they have faltered. And I do believe this is their first real test that they've gotten in the last 3 weeks. And I think it's going to be too much for them to handle. I think the Packers win this one in a relatively close game. Kev, I do agree with you in that regard. But I think when it's all said and done, I think the Packers win this one by a touchdown. I'm going to say that the Packers win this one by the score of 27-20 when this game is all said and done.